Welcome to the Rock's Back Pages podcast. My name, as ever, is Barney Hoskins. I'm here, as ever, with my colleague Mark Pringle.
Hi, Barney.
We'll be talking a little later about the great Sam Cooke, also about the week's new audio interview, which features Isobel Campbell talking about her first album with Mark Lanegan. But first, I'm delighted to welcome one of the very best music writers of the last 20 years, Laura Barton.
Hello, thank you for that. Very nice.
Lovely to have you here,
Hi, Laura.
Thank you. Hello.
Yeah. Thanks for coming in.
That's
Guardian readers will be more than familiar with Laura's wonderfully personal writing about music, but why don't you tell us how you came to write about music in the first place?
I didn't actually write about music for a really long time because I loved it so much, and I
Yes.
thought it's just a thing you don't touch.
You'll spoil it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's certain things like poetry and sushi I don't think you should do yourself. Music is the same. So I'd been at The Guardian since I left university, so from 22, and I think it really took, I maybe did the sort of odd bit, interviewed Johnny Burrell or whatever for G2, and then a guy called Michael Hamm became editor of the Film and Music section, and Michael and I had this great friendship where we would talk about music quite often by email, and we were in both at The Guardian but in separate buildings, and he would email me and say, what are your favourite songs to do the washing up to or whatever, and we'd have this chat. And so he wanted a column for his when he took over the music section, and he asked me to do it and to sort of write about music in a really similar way. And this was sort of, I guess people were writing about music at the time in quite a sort of snarky post-NME kind of sharp way.
Indeed.
And I think he wanted something a bit more intimate. So
That was the Hail Rock and Roll column.
Yeah.
I mean, what I love about it is that you write about the experience of listening to music rather than like the music itself in a way. It's sort of how it feels in a given place and time to...
Yeah. I mean, I'm not, as indeed this podcast might reveal, I'm not someone who stores up facts about producers and dates and things like that. That my brain just never works like that on any subject.
Good.
So don't turn to me for any advice on that. But I love music. I've been obsessed with music for my whole life. My parents were I've worked in numerous record stores, I've done all that kind of stuff. So it just seemed to me that actually that's how most of us really respond to music. It's not through facts, and it's not necessarily through release schedules or any of that stuff. It's those human moments in our lives.
Yeah.
Well, the first of the three pieces that we're going to feature on the homepage this week is a piece about listening to the first Bon Iver album. And it is wonderfully personal. And I remember reading that, and I remember reading many other of those columns and feeling, this kind of kinship, really. It was unusual. You're right about the snarkiness that was sort of prevalent and just glibness, really.
Well, when it was good, the snark, and when it is good, the snarkiness is
great.
Electric.
Yeah,
there are so many
electric
pale imitators.
Snark. I think we've invented a new band.
I think I saw them at the Dublin Castle,
Yeah, I think of people like Neil Kulkarni and so on who can actually be...
Oh, my God, yeah.
Funny
it's such an art form.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because it rather reminds me of listening to Desert Island Discs, and I hate it when people on Desert Island Discs simply play what they think are the best records. And I love it, even if the music's terrible, when they play stuff which is about where they were at a moment in their lives.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which is how I think we all experience music, you know.
This Bon Iver piece it's really essentially about doing nothing else other than listening to For Emma, Forever Ago for like 2 weeks. And you start
minimum, I've probably listened to that album every day, at least once, for the best part of 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
and
really
you start off saying, if we have spoken in the past couple of weeks, I apologise. Essentially, my mind has been elsewhere, you say. And I really love that record too. And particularly, is it the last or penultimate track, Restacks? It's something that I just go back to
me too.
time and time again.
Funny, when it started, I liked Skinny Love.
Yeah.
That's the immediate one.
Yes.
That's the brightest one. And then, I think most people settle into Restacks,
Yeah. And at the risk of embarrassing you, I'm just going to read one paragraph. It is only 9 tracks long, a little over 30 minutes, a sapling. Vernon sings in an icy falsetto, the sound of winter sky and bare branches. He sings of his inhospitable surroundings of snow and stone and crows and cold moons, interspersing these images with a few warm memories of blouses and blood and brassieres.
I'm trying to get the word brassiere into as many pieces as possible. Yeah.
I love that. And you wrote many other columns like that. And you've written a lot of kind of travelogue and travelled a lot in the States particularly.
Well, you have this marvellous new book, West of West.
Absolutely. Mark, why don't you tell us?
Yes, well, it's
about... Did you know the
it's basically a series of road trips, isn't it?
Well,
these were west. This is West Coast.
Yes, so I have worked for a long, long time with a photographer called Sarah Lee.
Yeah.
And Sarah and I started at The Guardian around the same time and went through the mill of doing vox pops and fashion shoots and all kinds of ludicrous assignments together. And a few years ago, we started a project where we walked the length of single streets in America. So we started with Sunset Boulevard, and we've since been to Washington and Detroit and Miami and New York. And this is sort of almost a little taste of that. So Sarah goes to California a lot. Her husband used to teach in California, and they go a couple of times a year, and she loves to surf. And that sort of stretch along the coast there where you surf is really evocative for her of many, many things in her life, but also just to watch the people, the pleasure seekers really who come along.
Yes.
So actually this is slightly different in that we have surfed there together, but she did those photographs separately to me being there, and I wrote an essay about what the West means in our sort of psyche.
I mean, she's a fabulous photographer.
Oh, she's incredible.
If I modestly say photography is something I know something about, and I would say she's one of the best photographers working, certainly in the British press at the moment. I loved those road trip ones because I remember she was posting them on Facebook at various stages. This is quite a few years back now you started to...
Yeah, the first one it ran in what is now 1843 magazine, Intelligent Life.
Right.
We did the Sunset one for that as well. Yeah.
No, it's absolutely fabulous. It's taken a long time for you to kind of realise this project, hasn't it?
I mean, through no fault of our own. I'm not gonna go too deep into that, but that book has been ready to go for a couple of years almost. But yes, she's just... What's a rare thing, I think, as a writer, is to find a photographer that you have a real sympathy and a sort of shared eye.
Yeah.
You know, I know walking down any street what her eye's going to catch, and she knows what I'm going to do. And it's quite funny because when we do a lot of work together, I'm speaking to people we randomly meet.
Yeah.
And I think at first, or in fact, she said she didn't really know what I was doing because I don't really... If I'm interviewing, I like space. I like to see what people are going to do with the space that you give to them. How they step into that space is one of the most interesting things to me.
I mean, it relates very directly to the way you write about music. Actually,
yeah,
it's the same sort of process. It's the same sort of approach.
Yeah,
rather than like a series of facts and so on and so forth.
And the same goes for your broadcasting, of course, Laura. You know,
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard. I'm sure I haven't heard everything you've done on Radio 4, but I've heard a few things, and they've always been like your writing, you know, personal and gentle, and there's something really lovely about going on the road with you in a sort of half-hour documentary. Have you any projects like that on the go at the moment?
I mean, my next radio thing is actually this Saturday, but it's about illegal abortion in America. It's quite different,
right?
Although it does include America and feminism, which is obviously a big cause for me. And beyond that, I've got a book out in the autumn.
Which I wanted to ask you about.
Yes, which also has a road trip in America.
Oh, good, yes, I think people would want their money back.
Yeah. I should actually, by the way, bring you full circle, because one of the acknowledgements in the back of West of West is to Gil Vernon, who is Justin Vernon's father, Justin Vernon of Bon Iver. He and I, after I wrote that piece, he got in touch with me to say how touched he was by the piece. And he built the cabin where that album was recorded, and we became friends. And I've been to the cabin. In fact, I saw him and Justin in the autumn. They've got a sort of festival over there. So that's been a lovely ongoing relationship. I've interviewed Justin for every album.
You've done several pieces on him and really sort of charted his growth as an artist has been extraordinary. I mean, to go from that first album to what he's doing now. I mean, I think he's one of the very greatest.
Oh, me too.
Practitioners around. I really do.
It is nice, and I'm sure you have people like this that you know, artists that you are allowed an insight into their work throughout their whole career. You know, that's really special.
Fantastic. So the other two pieces concern Daniel Johnston, whom you interviewed in 2006, who died last year, and a piece about the Riot Grrrl movement. Daniel Johnston, briefly, because we never got to talk about Daniel Johnston when he died. It just was, unfortunately, he sort of died on a Thursday.
The wrong day of the week.
I know.
Very contrary, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating piece that asks questions of the way we kind of construct cults around people who are clearly, suffering from mental health problems.
Yeah.
And you ask interesting questions about that. Were you a fan when you went to interview him?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You were.
And had been since sort of, probably teens. I think when you meet him, or particularly at the point that I met him, those kinds of questions come to the forefront even more. He didn't look tremendously well, and he didn't act tremendously well. And he took more delight in talking about felt tip pens than about anything else, and I don't know if it's true, but because he would sell his artwork, and it was meant to be rumoured that his father bought a lot of his artwork. I don't know if that's true, but I can't remember if I touched on that in the piece. And I think it was ahead of a tribute to him at the Barbican.
Yes.
That piece, it's a long time ago now. And I remember almost being uncomfortable at that tribute because you had sort of the great and the good of music at the time covering his songs. And when he came on, he just looked overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So I do feel a little bit uncomfortable sometimes with that outsider art cult stuff, but I do at the same time absolutely love his music, and I do. You can step into his world and get deeper and deeper and deeper, and then sometimes it just becomes too much. I have to withdraw entirely, I guess.
There's a great quote in here where he's talking about his brother.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you remember this, and how they drive around together listening to music on the car stereo. And I just have to read this out. This is Daniel talking. He had a Plymouth Duster, and I just love the name of that car. And we'd be driving somewhere, and I remember we were playing Seals and Crofts, and we were driving real far to go somewhere, and the song was going, "We may never pass this way again," and we were just driving and going someplace real far away. It was a lot of fun. I just love that.
Oh, me too.
Back to the American travelogue.
Completely. And actually what's quite funny is, I knew we were going to be talking about Isobel Campbell later, or that you'll be playing that excerpt, and I was listening to her cover of Tom Petty last year.
Running Down a Dream, yeah.
And that opening part of Running Down a Dream, or in fact the chorus, is that same idea. It's, about not getting wherever you're going to, but it's about driving and listening to music, and two of my greatest themes.
You obviously have sort of a fascination with, the American road trip. So how did you arrive at that? Did you read Jack Kerouac when you were very young, or?
Yeah, good question, Mark.
Yeah, I did, and I have a slightly woolly relationship with the Beats. I mean, I studied them when I was at uni, but I have also made programmes and written pieces about the women of the Beat movement, and I get quite angry about that
the way they get written out or left
Yeah.
out. Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, I went to a sort of festival in Marrakesh last spring, and it's the Beat Hotel Festival, which I think is a good thing, but there were maybe just a handful of women on the bill, and in the talks, they were all about the male beats, and there were green room pictures that were just, I think it was something like 60 pictures of men and 5 of women.
I mean, Carolyn Cassidy and people like that, who are essential to
Joyce
the sport.
Johnson,
Yes.
Yes.
It is interesting, because I think for a lot of us, in a way, when we're young, there's something about the open American road which is inherently fascinating. And there's a sort of romance to it. I mean, for me, getting books like Robert Frank's The Americans and things like that, sort of...
Of course, Avden's in the American West.
Yes.
Yeah.
And being British and this little island, and this, particularly in my case, London, and, it's just this whole kind of different leap into sort of...
When I was 18, I did a Greyhound trip across Canada.
Right.
My uncle worked for Greyhound, so I got free passes.
Wow, that's the answer then. My uncle worked for Greyhound.
But literally it was just sort of, seeing a map and seeing a place called Medicine Hat or whatever, and you're like, I'm going to Medicine Hat, because why would you not go to Medicine Hat?
Yeah.
But I made a programme for Radio 4 Extra last year, which is about it was a North American road trip, and I wrote about that time, sort of saying that it was feeling that country move, and I couldn't go to sleep because I was just sort of amazed by this space, and lights, sort of telegraph poles and whatever, and listening to what would have been a Walkman at the time, and I just didn't want to miss anything.
I mean, I for a long time, you get very long roads. It's in cities you get very long roads. And they have this numbering system, house numbering system, which I didn't understand for a long time. So I thought this really is 11,154 Pacific Coast Highway, when in fact the first two digits may well just be the block number. It only just learned about that in Chicago about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, that's how they do it. And I thought, up to that point, I thought, you can't have a house number which is 11,174.
But also the idea of enormity in America in our tiny British minds.
Yeah.
Think, well, maybe they can.
Yes, exactly.
Right,
Exactly.
It's that idea that, you can jump into a car in sort of Vermont and just drive non-stop for sort of 4 days. I mean, you could probably get from Land's End to John O'Groats in a day and a half if you really gummed it. But so there is something so intoxicating.
And then there's all this music about that. I mean, going back to things like Me and Bobby McGee and songs like that, which and there's so much. I mean, I have to confess, I'm something of a early Grateful Dead head. Sort of, by early, I mean ending in 1972. But they would write all these songs which were all about this, the space and the road. Country music has that kind of
6 days on the road.
6 days on the road. Certainly in my musical life, the American road has just always been there.
Yeah. And one of the pieces that people most often want to talk to me about, I don't know if it's on the site, is one where I recreated all the different permutations of Roadrunner by Jonathan Richman. And I went to Massachusetts and did...
I think it isn't on the site.
Okay,
we'll rectify
sorry about
that.
But yeah, that to me is a summation of just being in touch with the modern world through driving with music on.
Yeah.
Driving through suburbia sometimes.
And now, of course, there's a slight on to, yes, but what America are you driving for? The America of Trump and so on and so forth. And becoming not just America, this country as well, the sense that here we are in London feeling fairly kind of cosy in our sort of our metropolitan bubble. And I find when I leave London, I feel like I'm in a foreign country now.
I don't live in London anymore.
Don't you?
And it is like living in a foreign country. I live in sort of Brexit land of coast,
Sure.
So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I suppose the question that occurs to me is, in the last, 3 years, has your experience of America been any different since Trump got in and everything changed there? Do you experience it differently? Are people changed?
I felt it almost immediately when I feel that customs officers are nicer to you. Do you remember it used to be you would go to New York or wherever and they would be a little bit like, why do you want to come into our great
so now
country?
Trump's in, they're nicer.
Well, I don't know if I'm imagining
It's
this.
counterintuitive, isn't it, in a way?
I know. No, I think they seemed almost apologetic. The fix,
Right.
I travelled over just after it had happened. It had happened, like it's the apocalypse.
Well,
Yeah, but I kind
Enough
of
said.
sense that it would happen that way. I remember I was in Florida shortly before the election, or earlier that year, and meeting an African American man in like Key Largo or something, who was saying he was going to vote for Trump, and my friend and I were sort of like, really? He'd voted for Obama every
is that wise?
term. Yeah. Think again, young man. But yes, I kind of sense that something was, if you can convince
An African
an
American.
American voter in the South to vote for you, then
Yeah.
Right.
Sure, absolutely. Briefly, let's touch on, because it's sort of connected in at least, laterally, your piece on Riot Grrrl on the Pacific Northwest and the bands that came out of there, and where, that whole notion stands now, feminism in Trump's America. I mean, this is a great piece looking back on Bikini Kill and Huggy Bear and so forth. Well, not Huggy Bear, but everything that came out of Evergreen State College in Olympia.
Yeah.
Again, was that something what was the first experience you had of those bands and those fanzines?
probably as a teenager going to clubs earlier than I should have done and seeing girls in, the northwest of England dressed in, the word slut across their chest, that kind of stuff, and the sort of baby
Did
doll
Bikini
looks.
Kill come anywhere near the northwest?
Not that
No.
they may have. They probably did in that tour they did with Huggy Bear, but I was too young for that probably. But I was aware of their music then, and then subsequently much later spent a lot of time going back and forth to Portland, Oregon, and that's somewhere I absolutely love. And I went to the women's rock camp there, and all of that is still very live. And then you've got bands like Sleater-Kinney, who are a big favourite of mine. So I still think that once you've made a connection to that, particularly as a teenager and particularly as a woman, it remains quite strong, I think, throughout your life.
Absolutely. One of the things I particularly love about this piece, wearing my Rock's Back Pages hat, is the number of fanzines that get mentioned and the names Girl Germs.
Girl Germs is my favourite.
If this goes on, there's about 3 or 4 that you allude to. And I love the idea of getting some of that stuff on
God,
RBP.
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Is it Sarah Marcus, who's one of the kind of
Sarah
big
Marcus.
archivist people? Yeah,
So she's probably got most of the
She
stuff.
has, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a great piece. Well, we're going to stay in America. We're going to talk about Sam Cooke.
Why not?
So there's a box set coming out next week, which is all the sort of Keen stuff, the pre-RCA stuff. So You Send Me and a lot of other things. I think we all broadly agree that a lot of it's pretty kind of trite and sort of over-arranged and a bit saccharine.
Was it Hugo and Luigi, or was?
Well, they came in with RCA,
Yeah.
so this is it's like lovable and wonderful and pretty sappy stuff.
See, that's me naming producers. That's exactly what
I
you're
was
talking
just
about.
that. I was like, thank God. I can tell you that, like, what was lovable? 56, probably. 56?
See?
Did have a fact, everybody.
You're as
let's just
geeky as us, Laura.
Remember my one fact of the.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I think there is that cliche that Sam Cooke probably could have sung the phone book, and you'd listen to him singing. It's just such a perfect voice.
I mean, we were listening to the Soul Stirrers in the office yesterday, and there's that Sam Cooke who does translate fairly readily into the stuff he did immediately afterwards, his early pop stuff. And then a process of knocking the edges sort of off him took place by his producers, arrangers and so on. Then there's that marvellous Live at Harlem Square
It's my favourite, yeah.
And you listen to that and you can see exactly why Bobby Womack was such, well, aside from marrying his widow.
Yeah,
and
having an affair with his daughter. Right?
And having...
Is that right?
And his brother married his
Yes.
daughter, so his daughter... anyway, his father-in-law was his... Anyway, brother-in-law. But you listen to that album and you hear what Bobby Womack heard in a way that you don't hear when you hear the sort of the out-and-out pop end of Sam Cooke's stuff.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, it was Sam's misfortune to just sort of predate the soul era. You know, he kind of gave birth to it. Not just him, but I would say primarily...
Well, him and Ray Charles.
Yeah, I mean, there's that box set that Peter Gralnick wrote the booklet for called The Man Who Invented Soul. And maybe that's an oversimplification, but he was a key figure in that sort of transition from gospel to soul. He gospelized rhythm and blues. Unfortunately, the idea at that point, early 60s, and that was the era we were in, everyone thought you had to get the white market. You know, Sam has to play the Copacabana. And the flip side of that is Sam going, do you know what? I want to play this funky club in Florida, the Harlem Square Club.
That's why they didn't release it, right? Till the 80s, right?
Correct.
I mean, we were talking about Aretha Franklin's Amazing Grace movie 3 weeks ago, before Christmas.
Yes.
And she was the case where, yes, it probably wasn't easy becoming a secular singer when she's straight out of gospel, but having a powerful father who was a superstar preacher, allowing her to do it, kind of gave her sort of a degree of carte blanche to go ahead and do that. Sam Cooke was vilified by the gospel community when he went secular.
He recorded under a different name, didn't
Dale Cooke, as if no one would realise.
Wouldn't recognise the voice at all.
Dale Cooke.
Wow.
So, I mean, in that respect, he absolutely was a pioneer of people leaving the gospel church, and he was a gospel superstar. We kind of slightly forget that. Soul Stirrers were probably the biggest gospel act of that time.
Certainly the biggest male quartet.
Yes,
They had a big teenage girl audience.
Yes.
There was a lot of that.
A lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, so R.H. Harris was not Sam Cooke. I mean, he was pretty kind of strict in terms of religion, but a lot of those male quartets had, let's just say, kind of frenzied female followings. They really were like knickers. I mean, it wasn't very religious. And Sam was the first kind of, I suppose, like teen idol in that era, and just drove girls absolutely wild.
I mean, interestingly, he also, towards the end of his life, was in the process of setting up a sort of degree of independence within the business for himself, along with another man whose name entirely escapes me.
J.W. Alexander, who had been a gospel singer himself.
Yeah, and they set up their own publishing company, or in the process of setting up a record company.
Tsar Records.
Which weren't the Womack's brothers, the Valentinos, weren't they released on Tsar?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, a very early attempt at the sort of independence by a black artist.
Didn't he also have some very canny business move where he got shares instead of advance, so he didn't have to pay a massive tax bill? Was that for?
That might have been something to do with Alan Klein. That sounds like an Alan Klein move. Yeah. And so, Alan Klein's company, Abco, still puts out a lot of Sam Cooke stuff, and I think this Keen box set is coming out through Abco. I mean, we've actually put together a playlist on Spotify. There's enough great stuff there.
Yeah.
Everything from You Send Me to A Change Is Gonna Come, and there are wonderfully like bluesy performances. It's not all Hugo and Luigi strings. I mean, Jerry Wexler called him I think he said to me, he was the best singer who ever lived, bar none. And even though Sam kind of does the same thing more or less in most of his, with the whoa, that trademark thing that he did, that pops up on most of his recordings. But I mean, it's always great.
It always almost makes me laugh every time I hear him, and I haven't heard him for a long time. I was listening to him earlier today, and because his voice is so delightful and so perfect, and I like it best when it has that rougher Harlem Square Club counterbalance.
Yeah.
But just
the
delicious.
first of the so we've got three pieces about Sam. One is just a record mirror account of his death, which, as most listeners will know, was pretty shocking and pretty unsavoury, even if we don't really know what happened. The first piece is Lenny Kaye writing about 10 years ago. It's just a kind of an attempt to explain how great Sam Cooke was, and I'll read out this short paragraph. He had a cooler, more laid-back feel than many of the gospel shouters at the time, his voice sliding in liquid ease as it manoeuvred along the higher registers. It set not only him, but the stirrers as a whole, apart from the ecstatic frenzy that was the gospel caravan in the early 50s. And I mean, he was a different kind of gospel. I mean, I would say that his greatest work is with the Soul Stirrers, the Stole Stirrers. Oh, you never heard the Stole Stirrers? We haven't got time to talk about that.
He was a huge influence on people like Benny King, who followed him, who, in a very similar mould, there's sweet, and again, guys who came out of gospel groups, but singing in a slightly sweeter way, which is in a way.
And I mean, a huge influence on like Rod Stewart. I mean, Rod Stewart was just an absolute flat-out disciple. Did that version of Twisting the Night Away on Never a Dull Moment.
Oh, I mean, Rod Stewart was equally influenced by Bobby Womack, who was hugely influenced by Sam Cooke, so it sort of goes round and round.
Yeah, and Johnny Taylor was another disciple. But, I mean, he really did create a new kind of style. And it's that blend of, as someone said, like that blend of honey and sandpaper.
I suspect that Marvin Gaye was a huge Sam Cooke
Yes, he was.
fan.
He was too. I mean, definitely. I think, he was the template, really, for that kind of, this sort of guy in the sort of the cool Italian clothes and the Ferrari. And I mean, he just was super cool.
The cocaine habit.
But then the flip side of that is that even before Dale Cooke became Sam Cooke, he already had two illegitimate children at that point, and a lot of this stuff was sort of going on undercover, really, and people didn't know about it. So anyway, that's Sam Cooke. There's tons more Sam Cooke stuff on RBP.
Darling, you send me, I know you send me, darling, you send me, honest you do, honest you do, honest you do.
That's everything that's free on RBP. So we'll talk about what isn't free.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the audio first. Isobel Campbell, Andy Gill interviewing her in 2005. It's it's 14 minutes, absolutely talking about, well, we can listen to a clip now about how she first heard Mark Lanegan, how she's introduced to him as a singer.
My boyfriend at the time was like, you know, he was like, you should listen to this guy. And he played me at Mark's, one of Mark's records. And, I thought the voice was beautiful. And then I kind of spoke to the woman that was doing my press at the time, who's a good friend. And she was like, oh, yeah, I love Mark Lanegan's voice. And so she kind of sent some stuff to him.
Yeah.
And then he phoned me up.
All right. It's a sort of sepia baritone type of thing, isn't it? His voice is. It's very good for bluesy type of things.
Yes, it's kind of warm yet gruff.
Yeah. Sort of a bit of rough.
Yes, a diamond in the rough.
A diamond in the rough, that's it, yeah.
When the Lord made me, he made a rambling man.
I love that, a bit of rough.
A bit of rough.
It's kind of like, I don't know what Andy was trying to say.
I mean, and she talks about the process of doing it because, of course, he recorded everything, his vocals in Los Angeles, she recorded it over here. About writing, you're going to play a clip later on. She talks about whistling. I think it's the Hank Williams cover that she whistles on that album, and no one knew it was her. She says, I like a whistle. I'm a good whistler. You know, she talks about how they were sort of slightly trying to channel Lee Hazelwood and Nancy Sinatra, but also about the kind of an overall kind of melancholia about the record. I said it's a short interview. She's charming. You know,
yes,
it's a phone.
lovely,
as you can
lovely,
hear, it's a phone interview. And you've done a lot of phone interviews. They're very different from talking to someone face to face, aren't they? But she kind of gets across that bridge of being at the other end of the line.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Laura, but sometimes I find actually that I can have a more intimate conversation with someone on the phone than in person.
Yeah.
Do you ever experience that?
I prefer in person, really.
Yeah,
but,
I do prefer it.
But yeah, you can on the phone. Depends on the age, actually.
Yeah.
Because older musicians are more used to being on the phone. I mean,
Yes.
you know, I think it's...
Yes.
I don't like doing sort of video call interviews. I find that...
Skype sort of thing.
type
Yeah,
things.
that's sort of the worst of
Yeah.
both worlds, isn't it? Yeah.
It's awkward for everybody. But interestingly, I interviewed Isobel for that first record with Mark Lanegan, and she talked to me about that first phone call and how, because she sent him a Man Ray postcard and a half written song, and when he called her, he sang the song down the phone.
She mentions that in this interview.
Okay,
yes.
yeah. And I just think it's quite nice that that's a phone courtship as well.
She talks about how she loved hearing him singing down the phone. Anyway, it's great. I mean, you know, it's nothing I can say about it because it's stuff that's just pretty much passed me by. I was never a Lanegan fan, certainly not a fan of his previous band, Screaming Trees. I think
Has the word "screaming tree" has ever been said with more disdain?
No, but he has talked about other acts with even more disdain.
Witheringly.
Pringle disdain. I was a huge Isobel Campbell, or a huge Belle Sebastian fan, I should say. Particularly, they were one of those bands that changed my life, so I kind of knew her stuff back in those days.
Right.
Better.
She's got a new album coming out, which is why we're adding this week. I'd love to hear an interview with Mark sitting in. That would be fun. I mean, what do you actually... I mean, what do you think the records, the 3 albums and some EPs that they made together, do you think that they're really great or what?
I don't think they're super, super, super great.
No.
I
That's what I
don't
think.
really return to them very often, but
No.
I found I did enjoy that first one, but a lot of that came sort of off the back of her doing the sort of gentle waves stuff. And some of her early solo stuff. And when I think she was crying out for a hardness.
Yes.
One of the things about Belle and Sebastian was that there was always a darkness to the lyrics.
Yes.
It was a brilliant counterfoil to the sweetness. And I think her early stuff didn't quite have that.
Right.
So it was a relief to hear her with Mark Lanegan, but I don't really listen to them very often. That's not an insult to it as well.
I liked her listening to this. I mean, once a week I digitise an audio interview to post on the site. And you do sort of, just listening to it, you form an opinion of who's been interviewed and who's doing the interviewing as well.
Yeah, inevitably.
And Andy Gill's an interviewer I like.
Oh,
There's something, and sadly died, not too long ago. But he's a very gentle interviewer, but he asks very good questions. But sometimes I'm listening to this and I end up absolutely hating the person that
Yeah, of
they're
course.
being interviewed.
Of course.
And in this one, actually, even though it's not, it's on the phone, I found myself really liking her.
She's absolutely
impish,
charming.
yeah.
She laughs very
Yeah.
easily and doesn't seem to take herself too seriously.
No, not at all.
One of the things I really like about this partnership is that although it's clearly, you can't be disingenuous about it, it's channeling Lee Hazelwood and Nancy Sinatra and even you could sort of say, Roland Howard and Lydia Lunch. That sort of gothic Americana, if you like. What's interesting is the sort of slight role reversal, really. That Mark is the Nancy Sinatra
Yes,
in this.
yeah.
I like that.
I'd love you to say that to his face.
Don't worry, look, I'm not going to say it to Mark Lanigan's face.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I love his voice. I have to say, to me, he's kind of like, when I listen to Mark Lanigan, I think, wouldn't it have been interesting if Nick Cave could actually have sung?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Not really.
I love Nick and so forth, but the fact is he's not a singer.
No.
And in some ways, I suppose you could say Mark is almost like Sprechsung. It's somewhere between just intoning in a kind of Johnny Cash, deep gravelly baritone and actually singing. There's one song I listened to last night. I was listening to earlier stuff. On one of the Mark and Isobel, where he sings actually in a kind of higher, sort of high baritone, actually how he probably would naturally sing. I mean, I do think this is a little bit of an affect. But,
Oh, God, yeah.
But I do actually really like the relationship between the voices. I mean, he tends to be louder. These are her songs, and yet he's right in the foreground and she's kind of somewhere around him. I mean, there's a great track on, is it Sunday at Devil Dirt, called Backburner that I really like. But there's few where I sort of think, hang on, it's all a little bit studied.
I totally agree. And I feel the same about, say, She and Him. Any of those sort of studied things. I can like them and get on board for a bit, and then I just get a bit, I don't know, irritated, a bit itchy.
Yeah. They're intellectually interesting, but are they emotionally really compelling at the end?
Whereas,
of the day?
She and Him, I love M. Ward's solo stuff. It doesn't quite carry into the partnership, although that is fun. So, yeah.
I loved Mark Lanigan way before he met Isobel. He did an album where he does some Bobby Bland's I'll Take Care of You on it. And I just thought, wow, anyone who knows that song and is prepared to have a go at covering it, he gets my respect. I think he's a really fascinating guy.
Absolutely.
So there we go. Her album is out in early February, and also it's worth mentioning because Lee Braxton at White Rabbit Books just gave me a copy of this last week. Is Lanigan's memoir, which you know about, Laura.
Yes,
Sing Backwards and Weep comes out in April. It's the first title to be published under the White Rabbit imprint. This is going to be a new music book imprint, and I've heard very good things about it. It's a wild ride and a torrid tale. I think if anyone knows anything about Lanigan, I mean that's during the Pacific Northwest. He comes out of that grunge period and how he survived it. And serious drug addiction.
Jeez, yeah.
So many didn't survive it.
He was in prison as well, wasn't he?
He's been there, done it, and bought the T-shirt. And yes, he still walks among us. You say he's like 6'5".
I think he's 6'5", 6'4", 6'5", which is why I did like the idea of you talking back to him. But
I'll do it by Skype. I mean, there is a sort of Beauty and the Beast element here. Isn't there? I mean, a lot of people come, I really respect the fact that he responded to her kind of overtures and they worked together. But there is that slightly, it's just that interesting kind of male-female kind of chemistry thing going on there.
She didn't really know his backstory when she approached him, did she? No.
No, if she had, she probably wouldn't have known.
Well, I mean, she implies in the interview that she had no knowledge of him really whatsoever. And
No,
her
she
then
just wants
boyfriend.
a low voice.
Yeah,
Really.
her then boyfriend.
And they don't get any lower.
They just played her some stuff.
Yeah,
She
exactly.
liked the voice.
Exactly. Mark, tell
Yes.
us about some new
New in the
items.
library, yes. Well, first of all, Bobby Hart of the writing team, production team behind the Monkees, talking about producing the Monkees, he says, they're funny, this is Bobby Hart, they're funny constantly, they're on all the time, just as long as there is anyone around to watch, they're on. So in the studio, it's kind of constant bants, as people can easily say.
Yes, it's like all boy bands.
Like all boy
They're
bands.
just on 24
Yes.
hours a day until they
Hate each
go
other.
insane. Yeah.
Jonathan King interviewed by Roy Carr at the Enemy 1971. Jonathan King.
Shudder.
And he comes over in this just repellently. He says, Hendrix not only thanked me for what I did for him when he first started, he also wrote me a very nice letter. I just hate being dominated by other people. If they try to dominate me, then they can expect to get crushed like an ant under my foot. And lastly, I'm just getting old, though I still look a sexy young 21-year-old. I'm still very good at sex, and I dare you to print that. I mean, this it's just your skin just crawls.
And you've printed it out
I
on that
printed it
piece of paper.
Burn it, definitely.
Reggae, reggae, reggae. Here comes Johnny Reggae. Johnny Reggae, reggae, lay on me.
Well, moving kind of, on to Freddie Mercury, interviewed by David Hancock for Record Mirror in 1975. And it's funny how, I'm about the guy who taught me to drive, my instructor, I was having a lesson when Freddie Mercury died, and my instructor was kind of a real lad, sort of London beer-drinking lad, and he was kind of mortified about Freddie Mercury. Like, no one seemed to get the gayness, which, well, to us was just so patently obvious from the get-go. And he sort of talks around it in this interview. He says, we presented a kind of image. We weren't putting any labels on it. We said, this is Queen, this is our music, and this is how we present ourselves. The funny thing about Queen is that no one could put their finger on it, and we don't want to give it to them. We say, this is us, and it's up to you to interpret it. The campness and flamboyance comes into it. We like to dress up, he confessed. He's kind of talking around the subject of his own sexuality in 1975, but in a very, very coded sort of way. But I was staggered that so many people didn't realise that he was such a
Queen were hiding in plain sight.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
it was so overt
Like Jonathan
that
King.
people didn't see
Yes.
it. What's your line on Freddie Mercury and Queen? Are you a fan, or do you think they're
Do you know what?
ridiculous?
I used to loathe Queen. Having grown up largely in the 80s,
Yeah.
it was just,
You
it was
couldn't.
wallpaper music.
Yeah.
And I've DJ'd a lot of weddings, and, drunken management consultants coming up to you and asking for, whatever big Queen hit. And I'm just like, I do not have any Queen. I do not have any Queen. But I softened a little bit more over the years. But yeah.
Yeah. 1977, this is a riveting kind of report/interview. John Swenson hanging out with the Beach Boys and specifically Dennis Wilson. Dennis Wilson's solo album, that only just come out recently, had got very good press, got very good reviews. And the band are basically falling apart in front of him. And of course, that didn't happen. But he reports all of these things. They're airports. One bunch are getting on one plane and the others are getting on another plane. That Dennis Wilson goes onto one of the planes and says, I'm leaving the band. And this entire piece is basically the band breaking up in front of John Swenson.
Wow.
And Dennis Wilson says, I see the Beach Boys coming to a close and there's a lot of backstabbing and maliciousness going on. And it is a really interesting read. Anyone listening to this who's a member who can access
It was
the
so
piece.
toxic, wasn't it?
It was deeply toxic. They're managed by one of Mike Love's brothers. Another one of Mike Love's brothers.
I think.
Yes, and another one
Odious
of
Stan
Mike Love's
Love.
brothers is a bodyguard for Brian Wilson. They've basically separated Brian Wilson off from his brothers. Dennis and Carl are due to be sacked. Both of them are due to be sacked. It's extraordinarily poisonous, and that poison's never gone away. Yeah, I mean, basically, Brian was sacked recently by Mike Love, effectively as a Beach Boy.
It goes on and on and on. I mean, one of the saddest things for me is that Dennis Wilson, never got that he died, that he didn't get to make a lot more music, because I don't know about you, Laura, I think Pacific Ocean Blue, it really is one of my favourite
gorgeous.
records.
Yeah.
I mean, as a musical statement about California and the ocean and the heartache in it, it's so moving about just how he can't kind of keep a relationship together. And yet one of the ironies of it is that I believe the title track, which is actually Pacific Ocean Blues, was co-written by Mike Love. You know, and you kind of, nothing really makes sense in this story.
That's right. They can't live with each other. They can't live apart. You know, I mean, it is very, very. The whole thing's really peculiar.
Brian, I think, realised that Dennis had real talent when I think there are a couple of Dennis songs on the Friends album, and you listen and you think, my God, they're almost as good as Brian. I mean, melodically, they're really beautiful.
But in this article, Al Jardine says to Dennis Wilson, "You're useless. You've got no place in this band. You bring nothing to this."
Yeah,
you know?
he was sort of dismissed as the kind of jock, surfer, idiot, stoner. Really.
High Lam's Sean O'Hagan tells this marvellous story. He was actually due to produce the Beach Boys at one point and met Brian, who didn't know who he was, and so on and so forth. Of course. And then the Beach Boys were playing at the end of a football match, an American football match, in a stadium to an emptying crowd.
Yes.
And Bruce
Johnston
basically kind of grabs hold of Sean and says, like, I'm the guy to talk to. I know everything's going on. And then he meets Al Jardine and he's in the locker room. And I think it's Al Jardine who's saying, "Oh, Mike Love is such an asshole. You know, none of us can stand him." At which point a locker opens and Mike Love steps out of the locker where he's been meditating. It's just such a fantastic, it says, "Hi." And sort of,
that is absolutely brilliant.
I know, it's a great story.
Meditating in a locker.
I'm
going to try that.
We are going to get Sean in on the podcast and I'll kind of get him to recount that at some stage. But it is too funny.
I better tally with what you just said.
Moving on to 89, Tom Doyle and Smash Hits interview Milli Vanilli.
I remember when this was published. I loved it.
It is hilarious. I mean, there was such a cartoon sort of, you know.
Didn't he ask him about what they keep down their leggings?
He did. Yeah, I'm afraid I haven't got that quote here. I wish I'd got it. But I love this guy. Rob says, "I can't see this rap stuff staying around now, you know. You know, the gold chains and Adidas. You know, I mean, yeah, you got that right, mate.
Yeah, 1989. Yeah, rap was on its last.
After they got exposed for not singing their records, another group turned up called The Real
Milli
Vanilli. So we have a piece on the site about The Real Milli Vanilli.
The guys that actually sang.
Yeah, the guys that actually
Who was
sang.
it? Was it Black Box at the same time?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yeah, we were talking
we had to about it last week.
We regularly talk about fake.
My old singer, Heather Small, actually was the person who ended up putting in the re-release, putting the vocal on.
Oh, did she?
Which I didn't know at the time, even though we were still together as a band. That was kept very, very quiet. It was part of the whole sort of schism, you know.
Yeah.
But that's too funny.
I'm just in love, girl. And this is true. Girl, you know it's girl, you know it's girl, you know it's girl, you know.
Moving on to Rolling Stone 1993, David Sinclair. It's fantastic. He and David Bowie spend the day going around London, visiting all the places which meant something to to his various parts of his career.
Wow. That's a dream commission, isn't it? Yeah. Can I do that, please?
And of course, David Bowie comes over as utterly charming, which he does. Most times, by all accounts, you know. I've got a bunch of quotes here. He says, "To this day, I'm really not sure if I was playing Ziggy or if Ziggy was exaggerated aspects of my own personality. I think I'm vain, but I hope I'm not narcissistic. We all have our own feelings about what we look like." Him marrying a man, he says, "I've never been out with a model before, so I hadn't even bargained on the cliche of the rock star and model as being part of my life."
Poor David.
And he says, "I think I was always a closet heterosexual. I didn't ever feel I was a real bisexual. You know,
I don't think he was.
No.
Really. I mean, it was just in the spirit of the times. Really. You fell into bed with someone of your own sex.
Yeah. Lastly, Lauren Laverne, Knickie, talking to Stephen Wells. I will always try and find a Stephen Wells piece to put out because it's just always
by law.
I was saying this the other day that I suspect
in his contract.
I suspect that he and I wouldn't have a single record in common in our respective record collections, but I would just read him for fun. He really likes him. He says, "But Knickie are also totally head screwed on, decent, humane, caring, tender, warm, loving, nice people. And like all nice people, they want to see the hammer and sickle flying over the House of Commons and the streets of London choked with the fly-blown corpses of the Tory dead." Which I just love that. So that's my lot.
Do you know Lauren Laverne? Have you met her? Or
yes, quite a few times. Yeah, she's brilliant. Yeah, she's a really, really brilliant things.
No, I think we're all sort of fans of her. She's a fan of ours. She made
Good.
said a
Should
very
I
nice
too.
thing about Rock's Back Pages very early on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which we use
and yet
relentlessly.
neither of us have been invited to do Desert Island
No, I know.
Discs. Your time will
Yes,
come, no
I
doubt.
don't think so. Unless I do something spectacular in the next 5 years.
Well, I'm sure you will.
Well,
What have you got to her?
So I'm just going to mention a few things, as I always say, en passant, things that I really enjoyed sort of overseeing, as it were. There's a great piece about the Libertines by Ted Kessler from 2003, which just it's sort of quite, sort of your eyes boggle and you kind of read the stuff that Doherty was up to. You know, every town that they pull into in America, you know, he immediately disappears and somehow manages to come back for the gig like 5 minutes before they're due on stage with sort of blood all over his shirt. And I mean, it's how he's still alive, God
he
knows.
lives next town to me. I try and avoid him at all costs.
Okay. I thought you still kind of, you know, haunted the streets of Paris or somewhere like that.
Sure
But
he
he's
does. I think
okay.
he's, sorry,
He
this
was
is a
clean for a
beautiful-
bit, wasn't he? I don't know how many.
10
About
minutes.
3 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he could have been a great songwriter, and he isn't. And I get really annoyed with the whole
Yeah.
love of the Libertines, to be honest with you. But that is a great piece by Ted.
It is a great piece. There's an interview from 2 years later with Beck by Sylvie Simmons, which is really good. I mean, Beck is a great interview.
Yeah.
We sometimes talk about this in the office. I mean, I interviewed Beck 2 or 3 times when he was, in my view, really great. I have to say, since Sea Change, he hasn't done an awful lot that I think really stands up, and I feel sad to say that.
I agree. I interviewed him more recently than that and adored him as an interviewee. Really, really
Such an
interesting.
intelligent man, isn't he?
and inquisitive, and I always find that's a really beautiful thing in someone who's so, you know, adored by the industry. But Sea Change is still my favourite.
Sea Change is just extraordinary, isn't it?
He always left me really pretty cold. I mean, I like what he likes.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean. I mean, there's the references, well, right through from the earliest records, there's references to stuff that I've always really liked. But it's left me cold because it feels like it's almost a manufactured process of I am now going to be this artist. I'm now going to be that artist.
I think he would. I don't think he'd disagree with that.
Also, I mean, he's that rare thing. He was born into Scientology. He didn't adopt Scientology. His parents are Scientologists, and he's never left it. And I was slightly queasy about that.
I think we're all mystified by that. He's married to a Scientologist, and when you meet him, you think, how can someone this bright and, as you say, inquisitive, be enthralled to this utter nonsense?
Yeah.
We'll get a lawsuit now. I did once get a lawsuit from the Church of
You did?
Scientology.
I remember,
I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember. I mean, I was in the days of fax machines, and I came down to my office, and this endless spooling thing was coming out.
With a personality test. Yeah.
By the way, you might want to just briefly a couple of other pieces.
Actually, sorry, can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
I was buttonholed by Van Morrison in Tottenham Court Road.
This is great.
And
yeah.
asking to invite me in to have my e-meter read. This was back in the early 80s, I guess. And he was a shill for the Scientology. He was
he
out
was
there,
really.
standing outside their centre in Tottenham Court Road. And I didn't clock who it was. I sort of said, no thanks, no, nothing to do with me. Walked on. About 5 minutes later, I thought, fucking hell, that was Van Morrison.
That prompts me to, of course, bring up your recent encounter with
I'm only
George
just
Ivan
recovering. I can't
Morrison.
believe
I know.
you trapped me in a small room and
I felt
mentioned his
so
name.
bad
Oh.
for you. I mean,
Oh no, it was actually, I laughed about it. I did cry for about 3 minutes. I went back to my hotel room just along the corridor and cried.
Listeners, just in case you don't know, this was an interview that quote unquote, Laura did for The Guardian late last year when his latest album came out, and you had the experience that I think a lot of journalists have had with Van. You just it was fixed 16 minutes, and you
28 seconds,
you literally said, "There's just I may as well go now."
I mean, it was a very. I wanted to interview Van for years. He's probably the biggest artist for me ever, and I remember when he did a blues album not long before, and a jazz album, and I asked every single album for years. always turn down. The jazz album came around and management wanted to know how much I knew about jazz. I had to send through my jazz CV and including a picture of a jazz family tree that I have on my kitchen wall, things like that. I was just like, what the fuck? Did you ask Mike? Sorry, am I allowed to swear?
That's all right.
Be our guest.
Did you ask Michael Hahn how much he knew about blues before he interviewed for the, of course not.
Yeah.
And he very rarely is interviewed by women, and I think that was a big part of it. And so I interviewed him that day, and he was apparently in a foul mood already. And the two managers
unusual.
I know. The two managers sat on the bed in this hotel room in Cardiff. I think they were worried that he was in a bad mood, but it just made it worse, and it was awful. It was like trying to climb a really slippery slope. It was awful.
What's interesting is we've got interviews going right back to the mid-60s and them, where he's been fantastically unpleasant to interviews back then.
He's nothing if not consistent. I remember when I started at NME, there were 2 or 3 journalists like Tony Stewart, Roy Carr, who would just regale people with the stories of the nightmare of interviewing Van Morrison. So this is going back to
He's chased people down the street. I think something from Hot Press, he chased him down the street and tried to attack him or something. Another lawsuit.
Well, it's a marvelous night for a moon dance with the stars up above in your eyes. A fantabulous night to make romance neath the cover of
The last thing I'll mention is a piece about Big Mama Thornton, Willie Mae Big Mama Thornton, which is actually great just piece summarising her career by David Burke from Vintage Rock magazine. This is like 3 years ago. And I've read stuff about Big Mama, and what a just fascinating character.
Yes.
Do you know anything about her?
A little bit.
Extraordinary life.
When I was at Ladies Rock Camp, they gave some lectures on great female musicians, and I already knew her music, but that gave it more historical context.
Well, so this piece is it's really interesting about the provenance of Hound Dog, also about lesbianism and how she ended up just playing bars in kind of San Francisco. And I think Janis Joplin saw her at some funky little bar in North Beach or something and heard her sing Ball and Chain. And, of course, it's the usual story, who made the money out of Hound Dog? not Mama Thornton, I believe that certainly initially she only ever made like $500. Okay, $500 was quite a lot of money back in the 50s, but I don't think she ever made any more money.
No royalties or anything like
so,
that.
It's a sad and familiar story. Anyways, it's a great piece.
Good.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Been snooping on the door. You ain't nothing but a hound dog.
Can we briefly talk about the absurdity that is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
We can.
Americans seem to take it terribly seriously. I don't think anyone in this country gives a flying fuck about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The very idea of it is sort of antithetical to what rock and roll's all about. But the list that came out, the inductees has just come out. It's Doobie Brothers, Depeche Mode, T-Rex, Notorious B.I.G., Nine Inch Nails, Irving Azoff, John Landau, and controversially for some people, Whitney Houston. And on my Facebook feed, particularly American journalists have been saying, why is Whitney Houston in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And some of the responses verge, frankly, on racist. And this idea that rock and roll is white music with guitars. And, it's what someone posted on the Rockspec Pages Facebook feed. I'll just give this quote is, basically, the only reason Whitney Houston became mega famous was because, like every other black hoe bitch female singer, she was told to accentuate her tits, thighs, and ass to sell records.
That's, I think, how Big Mama Thornton got her $500.
Yes.
What a ludicrous thing to say.
It's just appalling. I read that quote and I thought, we're not having this on our Facebook page, so we banned her. First of all, people take it so seriously. Why? The cry goes up every year. Why aren't you MC5 in it? Well, I think MC5 could well deserve to go in it. The whole thing is absurd. And people's response, it brings out the worst in people.
Yeah.
It really, really does, including me.
I should just mention, of course, that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a subscriber to Rockspec Pages, so you may have cost us a couple of $1,000 there. Whoops! That's the library. But Laura, your response to that kind of, essentially kind of racist and extremely narrow-minded, rigid attitude to like Whitney Houston being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What are your thoughts?
I hate any rigidity in music. I hate any definition of this is what this is and you're not allowed over this fence. And it's absolutely counter not only to music in general, but maybe I'm contradicting myself, but to rock and roll, which to me is huge and expansive and inclusive and exciting. And to have people having this white knuckle grip on it in that way.
White being the operative word.
Yeah, white and male.
White knuckles.
Now as I come to look at it. Yeah, I think go and sit on your hands and think about what you've just said.
But apart from anything else, the term rock and roll, the phrase rock and roll, came out of African American music.
Exactly.
It was, it was prevalent in probably the 30s to rock and to roll. I mean, it's so ridiculous. And rock and roll, even if you do see that as some kind of white version of black rhythm and blues, it's still rooted in black rhythm and blues, you know.
And the ongoing interchange between black music and white music ever since then. So it's laughable. I've only got to knock this thing on the head. We're
before we really do lose our Rock and Roll Hall of Fame subscription.
Laura's been absolutely fantastic.
It's been
joy and an honour for us.
It's been a joy to be in your cupboard.
Yes.
That sounds slightly sinister, doesn't it?
I'm starting to think it should be like the sort of, the green room, as it were, at CBGB's, and we should get our guests to scrawl something on the wall, like all the punk bands did. Starting with you, Laura.
That's fine.
We'll get you a spray can or something. But, thank you so much for coming in. I mean, we absolutely love your writing.
Yeah.
We wish you all the best with future projects and look forward to reading the new book in the autumn.
Thank you very much.
As they say, come and see us again sometime.
I would love to, yes. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. And
we're going to go out with another clip, which is Isobel Campbell talking about whistling.
Well, briefly, one of the things I love in listening to that interview is she asks Andy, what are other examples of whistling on me? Because he mentions Jealous Guy.
And then forget Dock of the Bay.
And neither of them can think of sitting on the Dock of the Bay, which surely is the most famous whistling in pop.
Absolutely.
So anyway, take it away, Isobel.
And on that note, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Who did the whistling?
Me. It's good. I know. I played it to my friends in the car the other week, and they were like, "Oh, listen to him whistling." I was like, "That's me."
Oh.
That wasn't really supposed to be on it either, but I was I'm a bit proud of my whistling.
Yeah.
So
There's not enough whistling in rock and roll. Apart from there's a really nice bit of whistling on was it Jealous Guy, the Lennon track?
Yeah.
And there's few other notable pieces of whistling, so more whistling, please.
Yeah, what other songs of whistling? I'm trying to think now. There are a few sort of famous ones, but no, I do. I like a good whistle.
Yeah.
That was Isobel Campbell in conversation with Andy Gill in 2005, concluding this week's Rock's Back Pages podcast. Many thanks to special guest Laura Barton. Find her on Twitter @MissBarton. West of West, a photographic exploration of the edge of America, a book of photographs by Sarah Lee with an introduction by Laura, is published by Unbound and out now. The hosts were Barney Hoskins and Mark Pringle, and the producer was Jasper Murison Bowie. The Rock's Back Pages podcast is part of the Pantheon Podcast Network. You can find thousands of articles, as well as hundreds of full-length audio interviews, at rocksbackpages.com.